What if you're traveling to visit your mother in the hospital and have to stop in a rest area because of severe weather? While looking for a signal outside, you heard a noise coming from a van, and when you opened it, you found an abducted girl. Now, you have to guess which traveler is the kidnapper, the quiet lanky guy, the charming guy, or the older couple. Welcome to What a Story. The story begins in a recovery facility with a circle of recovered addicts conversing and exchanging stories. Then a nurse enters to say that a woman named Darby has an urgent phone call. When she goes to answer it, a family member tells her that her mother suffered an aneurysm and is currently being treated at a hospital with her sister. Darby is concerned. She secretly calls her sister, Devon, and we discover that their bond is strained. She decides to steal a car to leave the facility and drives off. On the way, she stops by the side of the road, and we get a flashback to her troubled childhood, when her mother and sister discovered her overdosing inside a car. After that, returning to the present, the officer continues by informing her that all highways are closed due to an impending storm, and that Darby should wait it out in the visitor center. In the end, Darby decides to go. Once she arrives, she also finds several other people waiting for the storm to pass. As she uses the restroom, she reads the notes her sister wrote to her, essentially advising her not to visit the hospital. In a state of stress, Darby takes out a small bag of cocaine, but chooses not to take any. Eventually, Darby decides to go outside the parking lot to check for phone coverage. Suddenly, she heard a sound. As she approaches the sound, she realizes a child is bound inside. The door is locked when Darby tries to unlock it, so she takes a picture of the license plate instead, and assures the child she'll return before getting into her car. Darby attempts to dial 911, but there is no service, so she goes back inside. Realizing that the offender must be present in the room, she turns to look at the persons in her immediate vicinity. She gets introduced to Sandy, the former nurse, and her husband Ed, the ex-Marine, Lars the socially awkward, and Ash the charming lad. To waste time, Ed suggests that they play a card game. Darby pretends to initiate a conversation by inquiring about their places of origin, but in reality she is attempting to identify the kidnapper as the license plate on the back of the van is from Nevada. When Darby discovers Lars is from Nevada, she tenses up in her seat. Lars, who is also losing the card game they are playing, becomes irate. Darby uses the situation to excuse herself, enter a broken lavatory, and text 911 about the kidnapping. She even goes so far as to give them a picture of the license plate, but the service is still down. Darby gets up and uses a hammer to remove a plank from the wall, revealing a space she can squeeze through. She makes her way back to the vehicle, and manages to open the door. She observes the child's medical alert bracelet on her wrist, as she tries to untie her. Suddenly, Lars is about to get in the car, so Darby buries herself in a blanket. When Lars notices the window, he reprimands the child. Darby discovers that Lars is carrying a gun in his back pocket. He starts speaking softly with the child, who we later learn is named Jay. Lars begins talking about a man named Uncle Kenny, to whom he is taking Jay. Afterward, he gets out of the van and tells Jay that he will get some food. Darby leaves a box cutter with Jay and exits the van, slipping back into the restroom. Lars arrives at the truck's side and discovers footprints in the snow, which makes him suspicious. Ash starts to knock on the bathroom door to check on Darby. Before Darby can explain what is happening, Lars enters, so she kisses him. Lars decides to leave, which causes Darby to start telling Ash about a child chained inside Lars' van, and how he must think she knows now. He makes a plan and grabs a nail gun from the tool cart. The idea is for Darby to go outside once more, but this time she will make sure Lars follows her. Ash is meant to inform Ed of what is happening while Lars is away. Darby eventually returns to the van, but Jay innocently inquires where the men who took her are, implying that there may be more than one kidnapper. Darby looks outside and sees Ash and Lars conversing. They have the plan to surprise Darby. Ash and Lars follow Darby as she enters the building covertly, and they enter as well.
Everything okay?
Yeah.
Ash approaches Darby and steals her phone. He deletes the unread texts Darby attempted to send earlier, and opens the ones from Darby's sister. He discovers that Darby's family despises her and doesn't want her to visit the hospital. Back at the hall, Ed starts to worry that something is wrong.
Where's Darby?
I don't know.
He goes outdoors to investigate. Ash starts interrogating Darby and making invasive inquiries about her family. He goes so far as to inquire how Darby's father passed away, and the scared Darby replies that he shot himself. He asks which portion of her head was shot before morbidly pointing the rifle at her head. Darby accuses him of abusing kids, and in response, he admits that he is only in it for the money because Jay's father is well off, and would be willing to pay a lot for the safety of his child. When Ed approaches the van, and starts attempting to unlock the door, Jay is already inside the vehicle undoing the duct tape. Back to Ash and Darby, Sandy interrupts them and requests a private conversation with Darby. Ash warns Darby not to tell anyone, or he will kill everyone before he departs. Darby is so terrified that she refuses to tell Sandy what is happening. Darby deviates from the conversation by inquiring about brain aneurysms, and whether or not her mother would survive. Later, the two women return to the entrance hall, and sit beside the males. Soon after, Darby notices that Jay has released her tie and exits the van. Lars and Ash observe this, so Lars goes outside to pursue the child. Darby heads back to the restroom, so Ash excuses himself and goes after her. Darby strikes Ash in the bathroom with a hammer, but he manages to stop her. Lars shows up just in time to stop Ash from hurting Darby. Lars tells him that Jay has gotten away, so they need to find her. The two abductors coerce Darby to look for Jay. As they trek the trail, Darby won't go along with their search, so she blindsides them by shining the flashlight directly into their eyes. She moves to evade Ash's gunshot after being startled by it, but as she does so, she starts sliding down the slope. Ed and Sandy heard the gunshot, and Ed immediately went outside. While Ash and Lars look for Darby, she crawls to hide. Meanwhile, Ed finds an unconscious Jay, and frantically drags her inside. When Ed and Sandy notice the bracelet on the girl's wrist, they immediately realize she has a medical condition. Just in time, Darby returns inside and tells them what is happening. Soon after, Ash and Lars approach the building and start shouting. Ed uses objects to block the front door to buy time.
Through that door, I will shoot you dead!
The kidnappers pull back and begin arguing about whether or not Ed is bluffing. We discover that Ed doesn't truly possess a gun. The kidnappers devise a new strategy. They start shouting that they have the girl's medication and that she is ill. Sandy explains to the other two that Jay appears so pale that she might die, and that the kidnappers are probably correct. Ed and Darby refuse to give in, and Darby admits that she has taken the kidnappers' car keys. Ed shouts at the abductors that they are willing to trade the medication for the car keys, and Ash realizes he doesn't have it. Furious, Ash and Lars return to their vehicle. Yet, when they return, they don't have any medication. Instead, they are carrying a gas can, indicating that they plan to set the structure on fire. Ed advises Darby to hide the car keys because the kidnappers won't kill them if they can't leave the property. In the meantime, the kidnappers start dousing the building's exterior in gasoline. Sandy equips herself by pulling out a pepper spray.
I don't want to die here.
When all of this is happening, Jay awakens.
Is this Lowry?
It comes out that Jay and Sandy are acquainted. Next, a flashback scene reveals that Jay's home employs Sandy as a maid. While Jay is kidnapped and yelling for help, we discover that Sandy does nothing to save her. We also witness a scene when Sandy is on the phone with Ash, and that Sandy needs to get the medicines to them, so Jay doesn't die. Back in the present, Sandy screams.
He doesn't have a gun!
Darby is then pepper sprayed in the eyes by Sandy, and the kidnappers finally make it into the building. Ash gives Sandy the medication and instructs her to give it to the child. We discover that Ash and Lars did not intend to give Jay back to her parents and that the ransom didn't matter to them. They will sell Jay to someone else, and are involved in a child trafficking organization. Sandy is stunned and begs them not to do it, so she instructs them to take the child and leave, and informs them that Darby stashed the car keys. When Ed protested, Sandy pepper sprayed Lars, so Ash shoots her. Darby rushes to grab the pepper spray, but Ash gets there first. He then walks up to Sandy, who is not yet dead, and finishes the job. Ash drags Darby and uses a nail gun to nail her to the wall. He then attends to Lars, who is crying due to the pepper spray in his eyes. They proceed to the restroom to clean Lars up, leaving Darby nailed to the wall. Darby tries to lift her wrist off the wall while holding in her pain, but cannot do it. She locates a hammer nearby and reaches out to pick it up, but it is too far away. She decides to ask for Jay's assistance. In the meantime, Ash assists Lars in clearing the pepper spray from his eyes. Darby accepts the hammer from Jay but hides it for the time being, since the kidnappers are back. Ash approaches her and tries to inquire about the location of the car keys once more. He opens Darby's phone to show the new text. He then gets closer and tells her that her mother has passed away. Darby sobs subtly without responding. Darby's earlier SMS message appears to have been received, as the police are already en route. Ash grabs the child's arm and points the nail gun at her wrist. When Darby realizes this, she admits that the car keys are hidden in the snow outside the restroom. Lars receives the gun from Ash while Ash goes to get the keys. Darby comes up with a new idea. Since she is confident that Lars won't hurt Jay and isn't violent like Ash, she instructs Jay to approach the light switch and turn it off. Lars starts to panic and yells at Jay to sit back down, but Jay obeys her request despite his fear. Darby uses this chance to pull out the small bag of cocaine she's been keeping in her pocket, and snort it to ease the pain. As Jay finally succeeds in turning out the lights, Darby takes advantage of the situation to remove the nail from her wrist. Ash re-enters the room to find Darby holding Lars at gunpoint. Jay attacks him to take the nail gun from him, but suddenly, Ash rushes to help Lars as Darby and Jay sneak outside and enter Darby's car. Lars tries to walk it off with Ash's assistance. Suddenly, he falls, and the nail impales deeper into his head, killing him. Ash is irrationally angry now that Lars is dead. He exits the building and starts firing at the car. He succeeds in blowing a tire, which causes Darby to lose control and crash. Ash sets the building on fire, while Darby gathers her strength. A police officer shows up at the scene and tells Ash to get away from Darby's car, as he is about to approach it. Darby equips herself with a screwdriver and a gun. While she tries to describe what is happening, the cop shoots her in the abdomen. Ash shoots the policeman. He stands up after that and points the gun at Darby. He sees the police still alive. He then grabs the nail gun and starts shooting the cop until he is killed. Ash then steals the officer's gun and goes back to kill Darby. But then Darby uses the screwdriver to stab him in the throat, killing him. With her remaining strength, Darby crawls across the snow to reach the dead officer's radio, and calls for help. A month after the incident, Darby is back at the rehabilitation facility. When she enters her room, a child's drawing is on the wall, indicating that she has stayed in touch with Jay since the tragedy. She receives a knock at the door from a nurse, informing her that she has a guest. When Darby enters the lobby, she sees her sister Devon, waiting to fix their relationship. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next story.